everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton here at fmtraining.tv, where every day, every single day, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock, we are doing a live stream on the FileMaker platform because it's a high return on investment tool set. It helps your customers. It helps my customers. And so together on this channel, we learn a great deal. Sometimes I learn from you. Sometimes folks come on here and they teach me. It's awesome. It's great. So today is an exciting day. Before we get into the details of that, I'm going to go to the FM Training website. I'm going to click the left button right here. You can see the upcoming broadcast schedule. So these days were reserved as hot action news days because we weren't supposed to talk about it. We couldn't talk about it, but now here we are today. We're talking about the FileMaker 23 release. And so today is kind of an overview day with Rick Kalman. Tomorrow's going to be a server-ish deep dive with Doug and with Connor Brock. And then Thursday is going to be demos. So there's enough content today. We're not going to be doing a lot of demo stuff, but Rick and I are going to be going through kind of the deliverables of what the kind of an overview of what's going on and dive into some of those pieces. But the live action demos will be Thursday, then Friday, talking to customers who are skeptical about the FileMaker platform. Who is Claris? Should we trust them, and why should we give it? Is normally the three things that come out of people's mouths. So Rick Kalman's here, Director of Product Management at Claris. He really should be the product management god. I keep telling him that he should be, very senior person. He's like very humble individual. He came to Claris. I remember his first day at Claris. We was interviewing for the job. Me and him were both sitting in the lobby. I was there on another project, and he was there going to work with Delphina as part of the as the developer program, right, Rick?
Developer relations. Yeah, I was a technical liaison.
Yeah. So
my first day at work, believe it or not, was at DevCon in Palm Desert. Before I ever stepped into my cube, I started at DevCon, and that was a great start to my career here.
No, it's a lot because you meet a lot of great people at DevCon. So we're not going to talk about this too much, but DevCon has been scheduled up for February. They changed the calendar, changed the clock on it. It's going to be at Austin at a new conference center that Apple's building in northern Austin. So we're looking forward to that. More announcements on that will be forthcoming. And so we are broadcasting in high definition on Twitch, YouTube, Discord. Normally I welcome people, but we have so many people here, it's going to be quite difficult to welcome all of you. If you have questions today, feel free. If you have follow-on questions that really are targeted at the RCC, my side of things, shoot us an email to support@rcconsulting.com. If you have a question on the other side, we will try to direct you to the correct email there. So that is the upcoming broadcast schedule. So I want to point out one thing real quick, and then we'll deal with this probably a little bit more tomorrow, is there are 4 new server-related, looks like mostly, blogs that are on from the engineering department. Claris reformatted this website. It's a little fancier now, but it says the persistent cache information, audit logs, external authentication, garbage collection. All these are super relevant to a lot of my customers and myself as well. So I haven't read these yet. These popped out this morning. I need to dig through and read them, and we will have them in hand for tomorrow for the server folks. So that is that part of it. Let me get rid of that. So what we have is a little bit of a kind of a Keynote PowerPoint-ish presentation here. Rick created a lot of this, did a great job, and so we're going to kind of rip through this, and it's going to be kind of a back and forth between him and me a little bit on this. And so take it away, Rick. We'll let you start.
Okay, so thanks, Rich, for having me. I really appreciate being able to get on, especially the day we launch with the excitement. And the first thing you're going to notice here is FileMaker is a new name, and it's got a new logo, right? And so I'm here to say that the 19.x, that's how I refer to it, era, is over, right? We have moved on now to FileMaker 2023 and been doing this since FileMaker 5.5, right? And I wrote the statement here. This is our most stable, performant, scalable, and secure release ever. We always evolve the platform, and we always aspire to these things. But the 19.x era really allowed us to focus on a lot of these key areas. Yeah, you can go on to the next slide, if you will, Rich. Yeah, so at a high level, what I'd say about this release is primarily it's focused on professional developers, and as well, you'll see a lot of stuff there for server admins. But my definition of professional developer is someone that makes all or a good portion of their living creating custom business apps with our platform. That is who this release is directed at, and those who have to administer servers. And because this is FileMaker that you've always known, it allows you to leverage the skills that you have honed over the years for all of you that have become FileMaker developers. Then also, we hope it sends a strong signal that we are continuing to deliver advancements in the FileMaker platform so that you can keep iterating on and improving the apps that you've got out there that you're working on, that got production that you're supporting for your customers until you are ready to migrate to our newer Claris platform. We're not going to rip anything out from under you. We get it, believe me. This release, as I said earlier in the tagline, it really delivers significant enhancements in these areas here, and I think you'll see what we're talking about. But at the same time, we're maintaining FileMaker's ubiquitous deployment capabilities, and this is really a strong competitive differentiator for us. And so what do I mean when I say this? Well, a lot of our competitors are in the cloud, and if the internet connection goes down, everything you're doing goes down, right? What I mean by this is with FileMaker, you want to deploy on premise, knock yourself out, right? You want to be offline, go ahead. You want to serve it on your hardware, do it on Mac, Windows, or Linux. You want to do it in your cloud, that's great. If you want to do it in our cloud, that's fine. And you can build it on Mac or build it on Windows and deploy it to either way, but you can also deploy it into a web browser, onto an iOS device, onto other mobile devices, and you can mash them all up and have a hybrid of all of that. Nobody does this. And believe me, I'm doing a lot of competitive analysis. Nobody does this, right? So what this allows FileMaker to do is mostly you never have to say no, right? And we should never forget that is a massive competitive advantage for us. The other thing that we have been doing is we are continuing to evolve and extend our integration capabilities. There was a time when FileMaker was an island, right? And it didn't talk to anyone. That world is radically different now. Go ahead, Rich. I want to talk about the relationship between what we're talking about today, the FileMaker 2023 release, the FileMaker platform, and its relationship to the Claris platform. So first and foremost, this is built on top of the FileMaker platform and all of its mature capabilities that we've been iterating on for the last 37 years, right? And so it is that. But it brings into the platform Claris Connect, that's been separate, and also introduces Claris Studio. And so when we talk about Claris Studio, it is our new modern web-based app experience, okay? Allowing web forms, other web applications to be built directly in a web browser. And it has a two-way communication interaction between FileMaker Pro and Claris Studio, or excuse me, Claris Pro. I misspoke. Been here a long time. It's a hard habit to break. And very much like you come to expect, if you ever have used external SQL data sources with SQL Server, MySQL, and so on, very similar to that, so that you can mix these things together. However, as I said before, we realize that many of you have projects that are not ready to migrate over to the Claris platform. There may be impediments. There's things that it doesn't quite do yet. Maybe you have to use a Windows server and there's only a Linux available. So what FileMaker 2023 represents, it's a stepping stone release towards the Claris platform and the capabilities that we're adding there as that matures out. For example, one of the things we'll talk about today is, as of today, we are offering a free access level to Connect. It used to be the developer, and I can't remember how much it costs, but that is now free. And inside FileMaker Pro 2023, we have a new Connect script step that will communicate with Connect on that side, making it easier than what you currently have to do in order to get those connections going. So that's a little bit about the relationship between the FileMaker 2023 platform and the Claris platform. And next slide, Rich. And then, So I want to talk about the top goals that we had for this release. First and foremost, it's to retain our best customers. And I would contend that most of you listening to this are probably our best customers. But those are you that are staying current and have been with us as we've evolved the platform during the 19.x era. Believe it or not, next month, 19 will have been in market for 3 years. 3 years, right? And that's why I call it that era. But in that time, we have made massive advancements in the platform. The second goal is to re-engage previous customers who may have fallen several releases behind and really have no idea where the platform has gone to because what they're doing is working. But we want to tell them that you need to take a look at what we've been doing. The other thing I think that's interesting is we may have a number of customers that are hanging out on earlier versions, say 19.1, 19.2, not realizing that we've changed from annual whole number releases to iterative releases where we're releasing about 3 or 4 times a year. And so while you think you're current and they're just bug fixes, we're actually enhancing the platform as if every few months was an annual release. So we wanted to have something that popped out. That's why a new name, a new logo, to make sure that people are staying with us on the latest platform. And then as a reminder about what happened during this era of 19.1 to 19.6, we pretty significantly opened the FileMaker platform. And what are my examples of this? We have the ability now to run JavaScript in web viewers. We have the whole JavaScript add-on capability. We've leveraged and enhanced our leverage of JSON. We're enhancing curl. In fact, we're introducing secure FTP support, our RESTful API, OData, which is sort of the REST replacement for ODBC. We'll keep that for a while, but it's there. The admin API, being able to leverage core ML, being able to leverage OAuth, and being able to serialize and deserialize your files into save as XML. And then on top of that, we're putting in the connection to Claris Connect, making all this easier, right? So that the reality is, this day and age, no one is sitting on one monolithic app. Everything is talking to everything else, and so we do too. And that is very significant part of that. And then, of course, we've also been making some significant enhancements to security, like getting SOC 2, Type 2, and ISO compliance standard certifications for our cloud properties. I just want to punctuate that 19.x era that come out of to let people be either aware of or understand how much was achieved in that time frame when it might have looked like we're sticking on something old for so long. 3 years on 19, what's up, right? Where's the FileMaker? And we also contend that gave a little bit of hesitancy of people of what's going on, right? Especially because we're working on other things as well. Of course, we have to. We're a software company. We've got to be forward leaning into the future. And so over to you, Rich.
Yeah, no. So 2 questions popped up, and I want to hit on these before we dig in deeper. And the first is that we're calling it FileMaker 23 is kind of this, what we refer to it, but the version numbering is still 20. I already have several questions over here, people saying, hey, how come we're not getting alignment between the actual like technical number and the marketing number? Because it seems like that shouldn't be that hard, right? Why don't we just skip 20, 21, 22? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I get it. Okay. One is the name that we're putting on the product doesn't appear inside the product. Inside the product, when you need to talk to, say, support or know exactly what version you're on, we'll continue that 20 dot whatever, and we'll continue to increment that. At some point, we might align those, but it's far easier for us to go by those numerals than to do years, right? The thing is about the 2023 name, it's more representative of how we're shipping software now, rather than these leaps from so now you'll know its freshness by the season it's in. And a lot of our competitors do this as well. So it might not be that on January 1st of 2024, FileMaker 2024 comes out, but you'll know within what time frame and it's just better reflection of how we're delivering software.
No, I love 23. I just and I agree with some people on this. Just from some simplicity, just if we had a version numbering of that would closely chase it, would be great. All right, cool. So I wanted to, this is a back and forth with me and Rick, and so Rick handled the first couple slides. I'm going to drive a little bit more here, a little bit. And so the next one that comes up is this issue of, we talked about this scalability, security, reliability, WebDirect. So this is kind of part of this conversation we're going to dig into more tomorrow with the server folks. But this was originally supposed to be kind of a infrastructure quality of life improvement update for the platform, and it turned out to be a lot more than that. And I can't wait to see how they're going to tell me that I can use 1,000 WebDirect users, because that seems kind of nuts to me. That being said, there's a lot of improvements to the underlying architecture. Once again, we'll get into that tomorrow. And at some point, I don't know if it's the next slide. So this slide right here, I'm gonna jump ahead on this slide. So the rest of this down here is basically saying that they've optimized things, they fixed some bugs. In fact, Rick mentioned to me something. There's like 500 plus bugs that have been fixed in this release. It's not a trivial amount. Every once in a while, Claris will in technical documentation say we fix hundreds of bugs, etc. We had that like with 19.5 or 19.3. This one is like a huge number of bugs. Not all of them were long-standing bugs. Some of them are new bugs because of changes in the operating system. For example, in Windows, you can create a PDF. Recent changes to Windows had broken the ability to create PDFs under some situations, which impaired things at RCC. And so with the new release, we fixed some long-standing bugs. It's huge. So this is about some new features and some security improvements and some quality of life, what we call quality of life improvements with the bug fix. It's really, really great. And so the next slide is one, I think I could speak to this without getting Rick too much in trouble. So at the end of the day, Claris is a part, a subsidiary, a division, a subsection of Apple, whatever you want to call it. And Apple doesn't want to be on TV with people saying, hey, we hacked their stuff, right? You don't hear about Apple people hacked the phones and things like that. You just don't hear about that unless it's the federal government trying to get into a terrorist phone, right? It just generally, you don't hear about things like this. And the reason is Apple takes security very seriously. So Claris builds a product, they get ready to ship it, and before they actually goes out the door, Apple security gets involved and they run it through the meat grinder. They're looking to break into it, to hack it, to cause problems. They spend time on this. In fact, sometimes they'll make suggestions or adjustments to it, and Claris has to go back and rejigger things a little bit. But that commitment to quality from Apple corporate, we're talking about Tim Cook Apple, right? The big one. Claris is part of that. So it gives you confidence that A, Apple uses the product, B, they don't want to get smeared on TV with having a product problem. So this slide is a very nice way of saying we've been run through the meat grinder and we're secure. Now, I would point out that if your password on your server is 1234, Claris can't help you with that. And some of you do that, and you know who you are, right? Because I know, because we talked to you. So moving along. So this is more about deployment options. Jacob Taylor, are you by any chance still in this conversation?
I am.
So Jacob Taylor, you know Jacob. He's one of our server guys. He goes back and forth, sometimes with Wim Reliant and talking back and forth. So the big one that's here, besides all the bug fixes, is the support for ARM processor. Would you care to summarize why this matters? Why should I care?
It means that you can use, you probably wouldn't use the base model, but you can use computers like a Raspberry Pi for small test servers for as an example usage that this allows for you. So that microprocessor architecture, it's the Apple M1s. That's where it comes from. Those are the same thing. It's an ARM processor type. This will support any of the modern, I say the modern ones because they probably didn't compile it for all the old stuff. That's fine. But it'll support all of that stuff. And so that means you can use tiny computers. It means that even in the cloud, for example, you'll probably be able to use the Graviton processors from Amazon, stuff like that. The key part is better performance, cheaper cost. So.
Okay, and I think Rich, there's something I should point out about the ARM thing is that will be a fast follow in a few days to maybe a week for that to be available for download. We just had to do some extra testing on it. So it'll be there in the blink of an eye. And then I think we end up with 5 flavors of servers. And it will end up whittling those down as we retire the older Ubuntu's eventually. Sure. But cool.
Yeah, the ARM processor, when I was, because people were testing it, and they weren't sure that it was necessarily a performance improvement, but it was a cost improvement. So those of you who see this is $10,000. You could spin this on a server in a year pretty easily if you had a real expensive server at Amazon with a big team. It's not impossible to spend this amount of money. So if you could spend a third less, maybe, whatever that looked like, then that's a measurable benefit, right? So just a thought. All right, so the rest of this on here is stuff that we're going to bang into tomorrow, but there's a lot of little bug fixing in here. There's some big bug fixing. There's some memory leak things that have been addressed. There's a feature that we're going to dig into here a little bit. So one of the features that we talk about PSOS all the time, perform script on server, is the ability to tell the server to run a script for you, and it kind of can do it kind of on automatic, where you just kind of fire it and forget is the idea. And with the new command, it's an actually new script step entirely in FileMaker Pro, or will run and go. The idea is that the server-side script can call back to the client. It actually can forcibly activate a script on the client, which of course is one of the things I've always wanted since probably when Rick went to work at Claris. It's a really great ability to trigger a script on the client. I would love to see that expanded out even more. Being the greedy person that I am, I want it all. I want it yesterday, and I want it now, and I want it free. Now we can't have free, but I will pay for great improvement. So these are all things that we're going to dig into more on the server side. Keep moving down. Integration. This is a big one. So Claris Connect is this kind of thing that kind of came out in 2019. A lot of developers are already doing APIs. They're like, hey, why should we use this? And the first time I saw it, I added up what it would cost for RCC to quit using the free stuff we had and to use that. And it was like a $16,000 annual bill. So that for me, that was a non-starter. But Claris has talked to developers, understands the issues, and is remediating those items. And one of the things is to get people to use it. And the way you do that is to give them a free account to let them play with it. Obviously, if you see value in it and you start to deploy it to customers, then they're going to need to pay for that, right? It makes sense. I'm all for the single developer getting the stuff for free or as cheaply as possible. And then when you start seeing value with a team, right, and they start saving real money, it's not uncommon for customers to run around and save, this is $40,000, save $20,000, $30,000 a month. That we have customers do that right now. And so if they're saving that, then are they willing to spend $100 a month or $50 a month or whatever it turns out to be on Claris Connect, right? Could be a good savings there for them. So anything on this, Rick, or we just keep motoring along?
I think it may be worth noting, if you've been paying attention to our introduction of OData and how we're advancing that as well. Because again, that is based on REST APIs rather than the older ODBC, and there's some there, so that's worth diving into. It's probably worth throwing out. I was talking to Todd, and he pointed out to me, and I hadn't really thought about it because of the fact that during the COVID era, that QR codes really rose because they're contactless. Everyone started using them. You see them on TV channels and everywhere, right? And so the fact that that obviously started out life being supported on iOS devices because they have a camera and they can scan, and it's a no-brainer, right? Then it was ported over to Mac, and we support it there. Well, now it's in Windows and Linux as well. So now you truly can use QR codes across the board. May seem minor unless you need it, right? And then it's a big deal. So some of these things I didn't even know until people point out to me how important it is, because we just give the Tinker Toys or Legos. I don't know what you build with them, right? Whatever your creativity allows you. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the jumbo space set from Legos, and you never build the ship; you build your own thing, right? So, so curl. There's some improvements in curl options. That's more of an encryption on that. Then the bottom one, we're working on a demo for Thursday. We're trying to get it to work, but we're having a little bit of challenges with that. But this is the idea that, in the day and age, you would think that shooting emails out of a piece of software would be simple, and about the time it becomes simple, then internet, bad people, hackers, spammers, things like that, keep spamming and shooting mails out we don't want, unauthorized mails, pretending there to be someone else, all these issues that come up. And so the security, or the hosting service providers, increase the security, which means all the responding software that tries to talk to it has to get more technically sophisticated. And so with OAuth 2 being built in, so the send mail command is being beefed out. And so you'll see probably a screenshot of that here in a little bit. But the idea is that you can send out with the typical methods, which pretty soon won't work too much with Google or Microsoft because they've ratcheted up the security. You'll need to use the OAuth capability. And I imagine this will be expanded out beyond Microsoft and Google. I think this OAuth 2, if there's a future on that, probably widen it out beyond.
Yeah, I would imagine. We've already gotten requests for others.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So as soon as you have a product and you put a restriction, on it, people promptly want the restriction removed. So yeah, so how that goes. So a little bit of a closer look at this. Once again, I did this presentation, I was practicing this the other day, and it burned up the full hour. Now I do have questions, Margaret, questions. If you want to jump in from Big Tom. Hey, Big Tom, how's it going? It's been a while. Is this still available? Can you still buy this as a perpetual license? I believe that there's been no licensing changes, right, Rick? This is still
no licensing changes, no pricing changes, no file format change. So yes.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, we didn't mention that low-hanging fruit. So it's still FMP12, and the licensing, whether you like the licensing or hate the licensing, it's unchanged, right? Yep. Other question, how about updating the relationship map? On this release, I haven't seen any changes to the relationship graph, shall we say? Okay.
It supports dark mode. But not other.
That's about it.
Nothing else. Yeah, it does dark mode.
Okay, cool. Next question, Margaret.
There's one, I believe. It's kind of more of a comment. Looking forward to all the fixes. Really hoping that the set field table occurrence bug is finally resolved. So I don't know if that's in the list of fixes.
500 bugs, but I don't have that punch list. So.
and I don't have it committed to memory, so I don't remember that specific one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Will the new send mail script support HTML emails and multiple attachments?
No. Not unless you roll your own, but not natively, not HTML yet. But definitely aware of the request and the desire and why people would want that. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's okay. For that, you can use either 360works email or one of our great sponsors here, brought to you by Christian Schmidt at monkeybreadsoftware.com. If you need a plugin that kicks and does everything, visit monkeybreadsoftware.com. There's your commercial. Christian, right? Yep. And even the announcer voice too. So triggering flows. Rick, you want to talk about this a little bit, right? The idea of triggering a connect flow, right? It's something that we haven't played too much with, but I think it's a big deal. Now that it's free, people really don't have an excuse not to try it out, right?
Yeah. So if there was a YouTube video, I think that Steve Romig did, that showed people how to use the FMP URL and all these back and forth things to be able to do this. So we just made that simpler. Okay, that's just step one, right? To do that, this is going to be compatible, across all of our properties. So Pro, Go, WebD, Server, Cloud, DAPI, and Custom Web Publishing will all be able to take advantage of this. Claris Connect, essentially, you can create these flows, and this allows FileMaker to trigger a flow based on an event, right? And it goes through webhooks, and there's a webhook ID and a URL that gets passed in, and then that JSON payload is then delivered from the results from Connect after it runs it to say that you trigger an action and it sends off a Slack, or it sends an email through another email service as part of that flow. The other thing is, as I said, this is just the beginning of this. We will eventually, very quickly, because remember, we're iterating very quickly, to allow you not even have to go over to Connect and copy that key and put something in the clipboard and then put it into the script, but you'll be able just to select your flows in the UI that you have access to. And then eventually we're moving towards flows, calling flows, and you see some other things here as well that we're thinking about are natural follow-ups, the ability to copy flows between projects, right? It's very important because everyone doesn't want to start over every time they build something. And to have a template available if someone wants to share flows publicly, and then some support for files like upload, download, parse, transform, import. Imagine you start getting some of these capabilities, the kinds of things you can put together. And then you can see some of the stuff on the bottom as well. So the first salvo is this. It was rather simple to make that connection because what we're doing is we're bringing the FileMaker platform and the Connect capabilities into the FileMaker platform, but also as part of the Claris platform, as those three pillars of the Claris platform: Pro, Connect, Studio. Together, symbiotically, they're very, very, very powerful. And as Studio builds out more use cases, that will, that'll even be more so. The way I sort of like to look at it, sorry, going back a little bit to Claris Studio, the way I like to look at this, Rich, is that with the combination of the simplicity of what you can do with Claris Studio, some of the richness it gives you in data visualization, and bringing Connect into that, and then having that set on the foundation that has been built in 37 years, you can have new folks coming in that get exposed in some simple knowledge worker type things. It's very powerful by building Studio and Connect together. And when they hit that proverbial brick wall that they do with some of our simpler, no code, low code competitors, they're sitting on top of an extremely advanced and powerful platform that there's a whole bunch of people in the world that they know how to make it sing. So this should float all of our boats, in my opinion.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So I'm playing air traffic control. So if it seems like I'm doing more than one thing, that would be true. So one of the comments that came up earlier, and I want to you can get a drink, Rick, keep going, stay hydrated, is that one of the reasons that Claris has gone to this idea of calling it by the ear is to explain to people that maybe you haven't been paying attention and things have moved on. And now if you're on FileMaker 19, or maybe someday you'll be on 23 and FileMaker 25 is out or something, that you're 2 years out of date. So it was a question that was put over here from Twitch, from another Richard. He says, FileMaker version 19 with nothing else behind it is not listed as an eligible upgrade on the Claris store for individuals. Why? Well, a couple things keep in mind. This is why I understand what they did with 19, but really it's confusing to people and people quit listening. So 19 has been out so long that parts of it are not even officially supported anymore by Claris. Like if there's a bug in it or some sort of major problem, they're like, right? Because it's so old, right? I mean, is it Jacob? Is it 19.2 they're still supporting, but no, it's 19.1 and 19.0?
3.
Yeah. It's 3.
3 is the minimum, yeah. So
if you're on 2, you're on unsupported software.
Yeah, so if you think you're on 19 and that you're all good to go and you're on 19.0 or 19.1 or 19.2, you're pretty far back at this point. And I would recommend moving forward, but check your operating systems, check to make sure you have compatibility there, maybe run a test before if you have a big organization, dive into that. It's always a mistake when people make a major jump and they don't check that, and then they find out half the laptops don't work, right? Because there's an operating system issue there. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Just it's people. I can't tell you on the live stream how many people we talk to who don't pay attention because things are happening so much, and there's not this new number that they don't pay attention. Richard's talking about 19. Well, we don't care. Let's do something else. And so it's hard to explain that, right? For example, the FileMaker certification test is based upon 19.1. Right? And there's not a new test yet. So if you want to get certified, you have to take a test on 19.1. And so they're going to update the test. That's not the point. The point, though, is that, I'm taking a test on 19. It should be great. There's a lot of improvements in the product, a lot of huge, Rick talked about this, a lot of huge improvements, security, features, capability, stability from 19.0 to 19.6. And now we're beyond that. We're into 23. So I'm going to move us forward here. Here's a screenshot of your flow, Rick. I don't know. So this is the script. So it's actually a script step that we have now that's available. We're not going to run this live today. Some of the stuff you'll see live tomorrow and some of it on Thursday as well. But the idea is that you can trigger this because previously to trigger it, you had to run an insert from URL or something like that, right? So
and other things as well, right? You had a back and forth, yeah. and this just simplifies that quite a bit. In fact, if you go over and copy the API key and that URL, then it's already in the clipboard, and we just automatically stick it in there. But like I said, what we want to do is get to the point where you can select your flows in the UI within Pro, and that will just be. You don't even have to go over to Connect. You can build them over there, and then just.
I can see a radical acceleration of people using this now that you've created a free tier. So there's really not an excuse. I mean, if it just doesn't do something, then you'll get the feedback, there's something you got to fix at the Claris side, but now there's really no excuse on our side, right? For me, there's a cost barrier to it, and I didn't have any customers that wanted to use it. So I personally have not done very much Connect stuff. As a result, I get to go back to school with all of you to learn what I've been missing, right? So moving down, so this is the OAuth conversation here, right? So historically, you could send via SMTP server or local email client, and now there's a third option with the OAuth 2, right? Jacob Taylor, you played with this. You want to give us a little bit of information on this?
Sure, yeah. Well, as you can see in the screenshot, it is Google and Microsoft currently, and you have to be, I think, a paying customer on each of those. The Google Workspace one won't work, I think, without a paid plan, and I believe we're not a paying Microsoft customer, but I believe the same is true on that side. However, what that means really is if you have any kind of a modern Microsoft 365 subscription deployment, Azure, like any of that stuff, you're probably already, other than the setup to get it working, you're done. Same thing for Google. If you pay Google for your email and that kind of stuff, you have a Google Workspace subscription, you should be already ready to go. There's steps for setting this up, and I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's fairly straightforward. Do this, that, and the other thing in an order, and plug variables into boxes and be done. So
there's a question on YouTube.
I was just going to remind you about this. I mean, you guys know, but sometimes people don't think of it. Is this dialog comes up in two places? One, when you're setting up a script step to send email, this dialog pops up. But also in the file menu, send mail. This dialog will pop up, and this will be now option. So it's in both places. So the end user, on their desktop, where they have access to do this kind of things, can do it themselves. And of course, you can bake it in into a script to take care of it for them.
All right. So Tawa on YouTube is asking a question, and it's a good point. So let's talk. I'm gonna hit the low hanging fruit real quick for those of you who joined late. So FileMaker 23. For our purpose here of discussing it, we're calling it, hey, it's 23. Using 23? Yeah, I use 23. 23 is great. The version number under the hood currently is 20. Maybe someday those will be aligned, maybe not. The minimum operating system on Macs is going to be the current Mac operating system and one version back. So there are some computers out there that this won't run on. And so the current one is Ventura. The last one is Monterey on Windows. It's Windows 11 Pro is the minimum, for 11, it's Pro, not Home, and Windows 10 as well. So 10 Pro, 11 Pro, and then there's a version above Pro. I only use Pro myself, but there's a version, I think, above Pro.
So
we also added support for Windows Server 2022, Rich.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, was that you jumping in there?
No, that was me, actually. Real quick. Because Rosemary said something in Twitch which we should approach real fast. Someone asked about the individual eligible upgrade stuff. People clarified they're saying that FileMaker 19 is not listed as a requirement for upgrades, and they're confused. Rosemary TG popped in and said, actually, FileMaker 19 is eligible for upgrades. There is an error on the store. Claris is fixing it. Give him an hour or two or something. Give him a while to fix it, and then that should be good.
Well, yeah. The fact that Rosemary's paying attention to us scares me, because then I know that I'm under a microscope. I'm getting kind of Rodney Dangerfield. It's like starting to sweat. All right, moving along. So, hey, this one's exciting here. In fact, I spent some time thinking about this yesterday, and we're going to play with this tomorrow. But once again, this is the idea that perform script on server. So let's talk about the two features built in right now. You can call a script. This is part of the paid training course if you buy our training. Is that you can call a script that this FileMaker server will run a script for you. So essentially, it's like an invisible, imagine in your mind, an invisible copy of Pro on the server. It's headless. There's no interface to it. But under the hood, it can run a script for you. It will run. You have to pass it the name of the file, a set of credentials with the file, and you can pass it a little information. And then you, at the client, can either wait for it to complete, which might be a while, or you can, what we call in the military, fire and forget. You shoot it off, and then you wander off and do your own thing, and you really don't know what's happened to that script. So this is kind of the idea. It's fire and forget. So it's asynchronous. So you can continue to do what you're doing. It's doing what it does. When it's done, it triggers a script on your client. It triggers a script on your client. So you could be off. In fact, we were playing with this yesterday. I'm like, well, what if I'm editing this stuff over here? Is it going to disrupt and commit my record and cause problems? It's very innocuous. It can trip a script. It's up to you to write a script that's not going to cause mayhem, right? With great power comes responsibility. So if it came back, I would love, once again, a window that just kind of like a notification that popped in and then faded out on its own. I didn't have to babysit it. Maybe someday, but you have to trigger some sort of indicator, something that has happened. But it will not force a commit. It's really quite good. I love it. And so that is a fun thing. We'll play with that tomorrow. So that way you know what's happened, right? It's awesome. Anything on that, Rick? Besides,
no, if you might want to go to the next screen, you can show a screenshot of the script.
There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. What's the script? Yeah, and what do you want it to do when it's done?
Yep. So it's a new script step they couldn't fix. One of the things that people is like, well, why don't you do this, Claris? And why don't you do this? And a lot of times I'm on the show, and Rick, you're not here, and Rosemary's not here, and I have to explain to people that there are 30 some odd years of solutions out there that are running. If they just willy-nilly change something, they could break existing deployments, existing solutions kind of retroactively. And so whenever they look at a situation where they're going to add a feature that could break something, it's better for them to create a new command. And so it's totally separate, and it won't change any of the previous dependencies upon it, right? So if someone comes up with FileMaker 23 in an ideal world, your FileMaker 17, 18, 19 solutions don't break. They work as is. That's the ideal target. Right. So that's why this is actually a separate step. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty cool.
To tell you the truth, Rich, it's a lot of work to make that happen, but I contend that it's what's made FileMaker be so sticky over all these years is that we really do care about things like backwards compatibility. And in an era where more and more connections with other services, things start breaking, I think Todd liked to say exponentially, right? Because you have something over here, then you got to fix it over there, and everything's changing fast. And next thing, you're just chasing stuff. So we really take a lot of care to make sure exactly what you're saying, that things are backwards compatible. We can't always do that, right? And sometimes we even have to do file format changes in order to accomplish something just based on the way that it's constructed. But we haven't had to do that for quite some time, right? But we've done it, right? Multiple times. Certainly in 7, we did it. And then 12, we did it.
Yep. So this is once again them preserving the backwards compatibility. And like I said, I always tell people test, but Claris makes the best effort to not break your stuff. A lot of changes just happen. All the dark modes getting broke because Apple decided to roll out the dark mode thing, and everyone thought it was great, except when it breaks a window or something. So understand a lot of this is just change in the operating systems and the hardware, right? And in terms of APIs changing, that we have a PayPal sample file that PayPal changed their API 3 times over 18 months to make it better or whatever, and all our code got broken. We had to go back and fix it. So it's pain, but it's just the world we live in, and it's guaranteed employment for those of you who want to fix things, right? So this one's a cool one. This is a good one. So on FileMaker Server, if you are telling the FileMaker Server to perform a script, so it's PSOS or I think SASE, either one will run a script for you, right? One's a scheduled, SASE is Server Assisted Script Execution, acronym that, I coined way back in the day, and then Rick took it and ran with it because it was having a server run a script on a schedule. Then PSOS came after that, where I use that much more. The client tells the server to just do it. I'm not waiting for a schedule, just do it right now. And either one of those, if they have errors, like say you tell the script to please pop a window and maximize its size, but you're on a copy, kind of an invisible copy of Pro on the server that's headless, you can't see anything. So if you say, show me a window and resize it or do something like that, that may generate an error. It probably won't break your script, but it will potentially throw an error message. The errors were buried in the logs previously. You had to separate all the other access, all the other backups, all that kind of stuff. Now it's a separate log, so you can watch that. And as your script's running, you can go, oh, right? You can see where the script's having a problem, where the server to an area that you weren't thinking about, right? So this is a great diagnostic tool for those of you, the Nick Hunters of the world. Nick's here all the time, Rick. Nick and Rick used to work together all the time. That's why, they kind of great people hang out together, right? I just try to watch from the outside. Can I see? So yeah, very cool. So that's another little quality of life thing. Is it a huge, make a billboard about it? No, but as a developer, this is greatly appreciated. Margaret, questions?
We have so many.
Okay, just why don't you rip a couple for me real quick.
So the big one that people have been really interested in is how do developers get the free tier of Connect?
It's on their website. So.
Yeah. It's not just people who have FileMaker 2023. Anyone can get it for free, right? So just go to Connect. There may be some lag in everything. We're rolling out starting at 6 a.m. this morning, and some things are trying to catch up with each other. But believe it or not, I think we broke the store a couple of times because so much traffic was going through, which is sort of a good problem to have, right? You want to break your store because
it's a great problem to have.
People are trying to give you money, right? So, but yeah, just go to our website. I think our new homepage will definitely point you to what to do and where to get it.
Okay.
All right, cool. Other questions, Margaret? Go.
Yes. Is there a replacement yet for the FileMaker Dev subscription, hopefully including the Claris platform?
They're talking about the that 3.1.
Are you talking about FDS? Yeah. No, we're definitely looking at that. We'll figure out how that's all going to work at this point. But with the new Claris platform, right? Because it's a bit different beast.
Okay, next question.
Cool.
Can we change the default FM Pro font size in 2023 for high DPI screens?
Not that I've seen. It's not a feature that's come my way, so I don't believe that's anything that we've done recently. Okay. I could be wrong.
A PSOS related question. Does the callback script for async PSOS support passing parameters?
Yes. In fact, it's a little bit interesting because you can pass a parameter from the originating client all the way back to yourself. And then the server itself, as it trips, can send you a parameter too. I need to play with this a little bit, but I thought it was very simple, but it actually is pretty powerful. So we're going to have demos on that. So yeah, you need a parameter, otherwise you don't really know. You could call a script, but parameters must be passed. So yeah, it's in there.
Okay. With all this integration, are there plans to make some movement on the connections, i.e. amount of things each connection can do and more connections for Claris Connect? I use it a lot, would love to see more, and it seems to not move very often at all, and I end up having to roll my own.
I think you're going to see Connect moving much faster now that it's been pulled into the platform it should have been a part of. That is the missing ingredient. People got to use it to move it forward, right? And so now we're getting it in everyone's hands.
That should be obvious. People have to use it before they give it. They have to use it. Sorry, Claris. Okay, she's over here. She's vibrating. Right. So yes.
Be careful. I might bring out my Richie hand puppet.
Richard puppet. Our puppets are talking smack at each other. That would be funny. All right. Other questions, Margaret? Go.
People, hold on, I gotta scroll back up. Does WebDirect support Active Directory SSO yet? Last question, then you can move forward.
No, not yet.
Any updates on PSOS spawning multiple scripts?
They had that, then they took that off because people were blowing that up, right? It was the auto self-destruct spinny, and you run. Yeah, no, they want to know if PSOS can spawn itself, and which could cause multi-threads to run wild.
Yeah,
we are noodling around with that though. It's something that's on our backlog. We get it.
Okay, so the answer is maybe someday, but not today. All right. Okay.
And remember, some days aren't as far away as they used to be.
Yeah, because remember, about every 4 months, there's an update. So, yeah. All right, so real quick. So I'm going to warp back in time, everyone. Okay, now it's August of 2022, and we're talking about FileMaker 19.6. In FileMaker 19.6, the last release, there was a huge product addition feature capability of transactions, right? So whenever I think transactions, I think Todd Geist and John Sindelar noodling, going in circles and pontificating at great length about how to make it work. And what they did was a total hack. It was a hack. And so what Claris did is they made this transaction capability. It's based upon a window. So you spawn a window in a script. You tell the script to begin a transaction. We've done a lot of training on this. It's in our paid training. And so this is in there already. So there's more of this here, but I'm giving you the short version of the idea with transactions. It's all or nothing. It's an all or nothing execution. And what ends up happening is that as you're running along, you can abort the transaction yourself, or it can auto abort. Okay, so what I refer to as a manual abort or an automatic abort, either one can occur. If that happens, that transaction is kind of rolled back and nothing is saved to the server. Okay, so it's specific to a window, not to a layout. You pop it in a window, and really, at the end of the day, it's about scripting, about a user, not users inputting. There's some hacks to make that work, but once again, it's kind of ugly. The idea is that a script runs, and as the person's doing this work or doing the scripting, they're doing things. If they shut the laptop, the internet goes away. You don't get a half-baked database with half the changes in it. The database isn't damaged, but the data might be misleading, right? Like, for example, I got an invoice, or I got a check the other day from a customer, hypothetical, $1 million check. And then so I log that in my accounting system, and then I have a bill against that for $950,000, right? And so there's a net of $50,000 there. But if you only got the $1 million deposit and you didn't get the rest of it, you've got an incomplete transaction. It might show that you're rich and you're not. And so transactions are an all or nothing thing. So given that, Claris, it was well received. It was very popular. We move forward, and there's some screenshots here of the transaction. We've covered this at great length with you folks. Claris glued on the next logical thing, which is the audit log. And so what it is, it's not an audit log that's magically everywhere in the FileMaker solution. It's an audit log that wraps around a transaction. So what it does is that if your transaction completes successfully, it will write out a JSON entry into a text file, is essentially. And it's interesting because this is, me and Rick have been talking about this. This is one of those things where all the super duper duper smart people are going to come up with great ways. They're going to come up with great ways of leveraging this JSON, having it auto read back into FileMaker, et cetera. But this audit log, it tells you the state of the data before and the state of the data after, essentially, are the big pieces of it, right? And so those are the big takeaways of it. It doesn't tell you every record like a HIPAA level audit log. It doesn't. You need to be able to say, like, I did a search for Tom Cruise to see he was in the hospital. They had nurses who were selling medical data to the National Enquirer, to gossip magazines, right? And some nurse got $20,000 for reporting stuff, and she got busted because they had an audit log in the database. And they knew that she got into it and was looking at this. So sometimes you have to log what people are looking at. This capability right here primarily is about the transaction. It tells you what it was before, what it was after, if it completes. If it doesn't complete, I don't believe there's a log entry for that. And we're going to play with this a bunch Thursday too. So that's exciting. So questions. Oh, Hansa's here from 24U. Hey, Hansa, how are you?
Hansa is planning tests, it looks like.
So Hansa is a performance testing kind of person. All he does is want to stopwatch you and everything that you do, including FileMaker 23. So Hansa, we look forward to you giving Rick Kalman a grade, a report card, A, B, C, D, or F minus if he really stinks. Which one will it be?
Okay, so real quick. We have 3 other questions. I noticed OpenSSL in one of the slides. Does this mean that we can use a free version of an SSL certificate, or do we need to continue to purchase a certificate from GoDaddy or another source?
Yes, but that may not be forever. We're definitely looking at and are well aware of the request. But bang for the buck. Look at SSL. You go to a certificate granting authority who then independently validates that you are who you say you are. That is security, right? So they're not that expensive. That's my stance on it, to tell you the truth. We'll look at other things like Open Encrypt and that sort of thing as we will look at all things to make your lives easier. And of course, we had to get away from the self-signed certificate this day and age that we had before that made it brain dead simple and not secure.
All right, so Flint on YouTube was asking, noodling around, he says, what the F does that mean? It means that they're thinking about it, but they are not committing to it, and it's not in the product yet. So the answer is blatantly.
And here's what I mean by that, Rich. We are certainly talking about it. It may be on our backlog. It has not prioritized to the top, or it may even be in the next release. But there are many, many, many things that we discuss, sometimes for years, in order to come across the best way to deliver it. And sometimes philosophically, we got to get out of our own way. Like, for instance, when we finally realized we should open FileMaker up as wide as possible and allow our best customers, our developers, to enhance it and build on top of it. That is a better thing than a closed system. Full stop. We didn't always believe that.
Okay.
Yep. Talking about Connect, well,
Everything.
Does the script workspace support larger text size now for visually impaired users?
We haven't done anything there specifically. And I don't know what the operating systems will do for you on the other side of it, but we haven't done anything specifically this release for that.
How about script highlighting?
People are clapping for you, Rick. Your explanation about noodling and prioritizing, they're clapping for you.
Good.
Cool. Other questions?
Does script? How about script highlighting? Much like how Visual Studio colors code.
Well, we want to make sure that Monkey Bread stays in business. No. We.
Oh, okay, no problem. We're gonna take that. There you go.
No, we've talked about that as well, for sure. There's a number. I mean, there's so many places to advance, and remember, we all also trying to build a new technology stack that will give us a longer length into the future, and that we don't have to fight the code as much as we need to do. And FileMaker was laid down in another era, and for what it is fantastic, right? But it doesn't do all things, and sometimes a new technology stack allows you to do things. For instance, get away from the tyranny of having to create a special layout, even though layouts are relatively cheap, for the size of a device. Why can't it just flow and do the right thing, and know that if it's on a phone, that it does something different than it's on an iPad or a desktop, right? And why don't you get that for free? And why doesn't it look gorgeous, right? And some of those things are easier to do with the modern technology stacks. And then we have the hard work of integrating it all together to make it one seamless platform. That's what we're up to.
Yeah, Stu says responsive layouts would be great.
Yep.
Cool.
I wanted that the thing that was shipped only on Pro on Mac that let you drag and drop all the boxes for layouts and stuff. I wanted portions of those tools cut out and brought into Pro, especially like an auto resize mode or like stuff like that. Would be really neat.
Yeah,
incremental improvement.
People are upvoting, literally upvoting the responsive layout thing, so that's great.
Yeah.
Kyle has a question. Are there any plans to add a quote, insert HTML, close quote, script step now that more solutions are starting to leverage more web viewer integrations?
No, but send directly to me, Rick_Kalman, Kalman at Claris.com. That request and some ideas of what you would do with it, and we'll look at it for sure. Again, a lot easier to do in this agile era than it ever was in an annual release cycle. Even if we shipped every year, it was an 18-month planning cycle. So I had to guess everything that we needed to do in an 18-month window. And if you missed the window, it could be 3 years before you got a feature. Now it can be a few months. It's a different era.
So I'm going to back and hit that one more time. So if you have a feature request, I'm going to say this loosely, and you want to send it to Rick, don't necessarily expect a response because he gets hundreds and hundreds of emails, but he does track. In fact, he has one of the biggest repositories of all the requests. make the case to him. Say, this is what it is. This is why it would work. This is how it's valuable. And if you want Claris management to pay attention to it, explain to them how you will sell more licenses or how your life will be better or what's the ROI, right? What's the return on investment for you as a developer? If you can quantify a return on investment for you, that means you might buy more, which means that Claris management will definitely look more fondly upon that.
So, Rich, a little bit more color on that. I even know the date. From June 14th of 2002. 2014. I have received every single feature request directly to me, and there are over 26,000 of them. And when I analyze them, there's a few that stand out, as like people want, FileMaker Go for Android, obviously, or Sync, right? The rest of it is an even schmear across the entire platform. And then you have to choose, of all of the things I could do, what are the few things I will do? And that is the hardest part of all of this, right? Because there is no end of things to do to improve a product of this power and magnitude. And so choosing of all the things when you can only do a limited amount, right? And so I get the frustration that people have about, why haven't you done this yet? But remember, I was the guy that finally brought you script triggers. And you waited a long time for that one.
Yeah, in fact, it was supposed to be there and it missed a couple releases and all that. So I'm going to book through this a little bit more because we are kind of, I don't have necessarily a critical hard stop, but we are at the top of the hour. So I want to kind of land the airplane. So once again, the audit logging will write out to a JSON file. If it needs one, it'll create one, et cetera, et cetera. I expect the Kyles, the Todds, the John Sindelars, the Jesse Barnums of the world to go out and create crazy, great stuff with this. I have no idea what it will be, but we look forward to seeing that. On
Windows, Rich, on this one, can I make a real quick plug about these 3 new functions and what the heck, why, right? And you can read there and see what they're for. But the thing I want to point out is the secret is in the name. These are going at the base table. They do not have to transit the relationship graph and therefore are more performant. And you're because you want to query this stuff to build out the context of your audit, your audit log. So that's what these are doing there. And they get right at the base table. They don't go through the relationship graph.
So I guess that you guys had these originally and they went through the graph. They were slow. So you beefed them up and sped them up and went direct. That would make sense. Okay, cool. Because you want the audit logs. That's always been the killer with audit logs historically, is that they add this layer of molasses to your solution if you're not careful, right? Yep. So remember back in the FileMaker 5 days, like, oh my God, someone says audit logs. I'm like, oh no, right? So with triggers and stuff, it's a lot more manageable and some commands. Hansa, some of the people that come on the show here are always talking about ways of tweaking, where to put the calculations, maybe how to rewrite the calculation to get, like Hansa's got calculations that go 20 times faster, things like that. It's his contributions to the community have been really great. I appreciate that. So the audit logging is turned on an on-Windows script trigger that's applied at the file level. So if you turn it on at the file level, that means potentially every transaction that fires will have this. So you'll need, if you have certain transactions you don't want this to run, you'll need to find a way of kind of making that not happen, or maybe it runs them all. It's all what we get to experience and play with, right? Cool. Kyle, base tables help avoid SQL2. Nick will like this. Yeah, Nick Hunter hates SQL. All right, cool. There it is right here. So the file option on window transaction, new script. So we will play with some more of this. This will be fun. This will be excellent. But even though we'll play with it at a basic level Thursday, I see this being greatly hijacked, and not in a bad way, but in a great way, but great practical application samples being created by the community and showing off, hey, look what I figured out we could do. And this is so great. I love those kind of things. If some of you come up with that, you want to come on and show everyone, let me know. We'll put you on the show. There's your direct functions that go right to the base, high speed, high performant functions. Cool. And then the audit log writes it to a JSON file, which it looks like it's parallel to on your client, right? What are that runs on the server? I guess it writes it into the documents directory on the server.
Yep, it writes it on the server. It'll write it, in your documents folder. I think by default. I can't remember if you can change it or not. And there's the log.
Yeah, so Kyle, some of the people in here are serious JSON ninjas, right? They see this, they get really excited. So this is kind of a sample of what it looks like. You can play with it, but basically you have the before and after data. So down here it says original and the change. So I said before and after, it's original and change, etc. So pretty neat stuff. So that kind of lands the airplane for us here. Flint says he has a separate server for managing audit transactions. Yeah, there's some layer of that. So Flint, when we say base layer, so understand in the FileMaker world, and you'll see sometimes this is mislabeled in Pro, and I want to reach through the internet and slap Rick or someone, but a layout is attached not to a base table so much, it's attached to a table occurrence. So if you're on a graph, say you have a contacts base table, we call them base table because there's these other things on the graph which are table occurrences. A relationship graph is not an ERD if you're an SQL person. It's more like a mix of an ERD and a view, right? In SQL, that kind of idea. So the idea is that you create these views, you can see things certain ways, etc. But if you have to get data through there, it has to navigate its way through that graph, get to the end and pop out, right? And so the idea is that we're asking for the base table information. It doesn't go to the graph, it goes right to the table listing, which you'll see sometimes referred to as base tables. So when we were trying to be very clear in the FileMaker platform, we say the word base. That means the core tables, not the table occurrences, because sometimes people will call those, I'm going to connect it to the table on the graph.
You'll never see that. You'll never see a visual depiction of the base table. You will only see table occurrences on the relationship graph. The base table is sort of this invisible, actually what's really going on underneath. And then there's magic in that graph, and obviously we've got a request that we need to make enhancements there to make it easier. Especially, everyone knows the spider of death or the angel of death or whatever, right? It can get cumbersome. We get it, there's a lot going on there as well when you throw in context and saying what question do I want to ask of my data and where do I need to ask it from in order to get the response I'm looking for. That's what the relationship graph is for.
Yep. Cool. Well, we have a bunch of people here. So tomorrow, as a recap, now that we're landing the airplane, this is your captain speaking. Please return your seat to the upright position. I'm going to hit the schedule for tomorrow. We're going to be hanging out with Doug and Connor. Doug and Connor are going to be, I don't know if I spelled Doug's name correctly, Mark. You might want to check that name, make sure I got it correctly. We're going to be talking deep dive into server tomorrow, under the hood. There are some under the hood things. Oh, is it? Okay, we loosely went skimming by today, but tomorrow's a deeper dive on server, okay? That's very exciting. Then demos will be on where we're going to play with it, kind of collectively play with it, see what's going on. Some of my engineers will be here with us, just like, hey, what is this all about, right? Cool. So any final questions from anyone?
Yes.
Ruben. Hit Ruben's question, Margaret, at the bottom there.
Yeah, there's another kind of related question as well. So all these features are for the Claris FileMaker and the Claris side. And related to that, are Claris Pro and FileMaker Pro essentially combined as of 2023?
No, and so we always build first in FileMaker Pro, and we rebase Claris Pro based on FileMaker Pro. So all the enhancements, except, of course, the special connection and the fact that you can use Claris ID to access Studio, and the special connection it has that's ESS-like. Those are the only differences. Other, it's the same code base. Now, we have some things up our sleeves that's too early to talk about that will make this all a much more clearer and less cumbersome, right? And but at this point, Pro first, followed up by bringing those rebase, we call it rebase, over to the Claris Pro platform. There was a second question sitting behind that one.
I'm going to restate what you just said. So it's FileMaker Pro first, then they generate Claris Pro from that. And you just left the one word out of there. I didn't want to confuse people. The second question was, so these two platforms are still separate. Claris doesn't like to use the word forked, but really they forked it. So there's really the Claris side, the FileMaker side. I will just tell you, I asked them this when they first announced it. I said, listen, this is going to take a lot of money. Is this a great idea? And knowing how they like to spend money or save money at Claris, it seemed to me that this was a lot of extra work. So we knew it someday, theoretically, and I haven't been told anything. I'm just telling you that it's been on the map since day one that someday these things would come back together. I don't know when that happens or how it happens or what they would call it. I just know that every time they build a product in Pro, they build it in FileMaker first because that's their priority. And right behind that then comes the support for the Claris side. But they're doing all the work kind of twice in some ways and QAing it twice. And so that's extra money and extra work. It'd be great if it was just one platform, right? So, yeah. So Margaret, what was the other question? So yeah, I think we got them both in there, Rick. The Claris, the FileMaker Pro features, or the FileMaker side gets the features first, the first release, and they are still separate platforms as of the current time.
Yeah, and we will make that less confusing in the future. We get it, believe me.
Yeah, because I've been yelling at Rick. He's like, he's getting tired of me. Carlton's here.
Especially when he brings out Claris, man. Then he starts to scare me, and that's in person. Right?
Yeah, she's intimidating. She's intimidating. All right, anything else from anyone?
We have one last question from Hansa, because it's Hansa, and then I'm going to let us all be free. When on the on-window transaction fires in WebDirect, but the client disconnects for the trigger finishes, will the transaction commit or fail?
Good question for Connor tomorrow.
Got it. Okay. Hansa,
yeah, cover that with Connor tomorrow. All right, everyone. We'll see you. Thanks. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!